Oh, what up, what up? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland, where your sensei Al Bob, here to tell you a story. And don't believe a word I say. Go check it out for yourself. Because nothing on this show is real.
And they're asking, when is the West, the United States, going to acknowledge the fact that the enemies of the United States are lining up for global conflict in World War III? And take a look. Pentagon insider warns we are on the brink of World War III after the latest Iran attack, this coming out on Wednesday. And also, in addition to that, World War III, NATO holds the biggest drill since the Cold War in preparation for global conflict coming World War III. Now, in addition to that, we've heard that one of the first things we can expect in World War III is cyber attacks against the everyday average person. I've got a video sponsor today that's going to be helping keep you safe. So let's go ahead and dive right in, get you caught up on the latest. And if you appreciate these updates, they're all cited in the description below. I'm going to put them on the screen for you. Do me a quick favor, smash the like button to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in and get you caught up on the latest. But first, a word from today's video sponsor, Delete Me.
Yep, today's sponsor. Yes, even World War III has an advertiser.
International experts at the Foreign Strategy Conference on UK and Global Security Scenario After the War Between Ukraine and Russia in central London today, dire warnings echoed through the halls as scholars and veterans dissected the complexity of the ongoing conflict. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of urgency as renowned figures delivered grave assessments of the current geopolitical landscape. Their insights suggest that the war in Ukraine is not merely a regional dispute, but a harbinger of much broader global conflict, one that has, according to some, already initiated an ominous specter of World War III. Chilling narrative unfolded during the conference, which painted a picture of a world on the precipice where peace may remain elusive for decades to come. Tara Kuzio started by addressing the role of the external actors in prolonging the conflict. He emphasized the impact of President Biden's policies on military aid to Ukraine. He said, war would have been if Biden didn't push on this drip policy on military aid to Ukraine, same as Macron. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Should the United States no longer support the war between Russia and Ukraine? Kuzio drew attention to the stark difference in the approaches of various nations, pointing out that the UK openly supported the defeat of Russia. This is not just a war about Ukraine. The foundation of this war is that Ukraine doesn't exist, Kuzio claimed, urging the international community to revisit Putin's 2007 Munich speech, which was largely ignored. Kuzio's alarming statements continued, claiming that Russia and Iran shared the goal of eradicating Ukraine and Israel from the face of the earth. He added that these countries perceive themselves to be at war, while Western governments, particularly the Biden administration, are seemingly oblivious. For them, World War III has already begun. Now, Alexander Ostov offered a broad perspective on the conflict, emphasizing the intercontinental nature of the ongoing war. It's one war, not two different wars, two pieces of one war of a bloc, the bloc of aggressive dictatorship, Russia, Iran, and their proxies. He identified China as the current leader of this bloc and stressed the need for the united front of democratic countries worldwide, so unifying to fight against these groups.
Blah, 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 blah. Now, you don't think that is not sounding like a scripted dynamic for the human race to be obliterated, you know? The 2050 agenda. Nuclear war, 7 billion people dead. The rich and powerful already off planet. Let the scum eat itself up. And they'll come back and do with what they want to with this planet. It's already out there in the solar system and in other star systems. They've already gotten faster than light. And you can't see this as George Lucas's motif of Joseph Campbell's vision. Not that Joseph Campbell wanted the Federation, you know, or the Empire, or the whatever, the next Reich. But just look at Adolf Hitler, 1933, Germany. How did he get one of the most sophisticated, most liberal, most educated people to go down that path? And do you think, you know, has anyone read Mein Kampf? And there was two of them, one and two. Right? And, Adolf Hitler didn't write that. He's just a poster boy, just like Biden is a poster boy, just like Carrot Head's a poster boy. They're both the same guy. They're images in the mirror. And we have been, put off to seed, to be distracted by what's on your favorite platform or fast food thing you can be a junkie for. Mhm. Well, I see my earlier today video. There were 13 views and one thumbs up. It was only about 16 minutes. Now, some people come on here and be part of the chat. It works. You guys can chat. So I'm up here in my friend's place. It's toasty, toasty, toasty. And we've had about 12 inches of snow when we've had about 4 inches of snow since about 2. And still kind of snowing up there. And tomorrow it's supposed to be like 12 degrees below zero, and when the wind chill about 20. So that snow will turn into one gigantic block of ice. I had to walk out of the deep green, and then my friend took me in his truck, and we had to back out of the Forest Service Road. That was real fun, about 2 miles out onto the county road. And there was a cliff on one side, and it was snowing real hard. And anyway, but I kept saying, "Praise Jesus, praise Jesus, praise Jesus," and help me God, help me God, help me God. And so, bingo, we got on onto the county road, and then we had 10 miles to go on that to his road, and we almost got into 3. So this is, goes through the Sawtooth Mountains, and the road goes around them and up and around and around, and there's a lake here, and it's snowing. The road is really slick, and people are out on the road. Well, my friend came and got me, but the other people were just like zipping around, and we almost got into 3 serious accidents. This one guy comes down the hill, and there's a real tight turn, and then a 90-degree turn. And I don't think he even knew that. He came down that hill way too fast, came into that curve, started to lose it. He went sideways, smashed right into and luckily for him, there was a guardrail, and it crushed. He's not getting out of that door. Those two, he had a pickup truck with 2-door, 4-door pickup truck, $60,000 pickup truck. And if we had come out on the county road 20 seconds before we did and got to where we were, instead of him hitting the guardrail, he would have hit us. And because my friend was going, he didn't have to go up that hill, so he was going, he took his foot off the gas and was rolling, and the thing came right around and slid right into that thing and went crash, 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 and then came over and slid right by us. And we just kept going. But and if we were 20 seconds from where we were, that vehicle would have smashed head on right into our side, right? Or would have T-boned us into the guardrail and into the lake, right? So, but praise Jesus, that didn't happen. And then we went up and we came up that thing, and it was a gigantic tractor trailer. What is he doing on this crazy little road? But he's on it, and he is flying down that hill, and he came over, and he was right in our lane, and we just kind of went into his lane, and he zipped right by us on our lane. It was like, whoa. Now, after almost 20 seconds, almost getting wiped out by that truck, we almost got head on by a tractor trailer. We kept going, and then we got behind a guy who's going way too slow. And so we were going up this big hill, and his wheels started sliding. He had two-wheel drive, and we went into the oncoming traffic where there was no traffic, and he slid by us and went right down into the woods. And we kept going and got here. And so, that's the power of Jesus, power of God, and my buddy and our conscious intent. I was conscious intent to pray and ask for intervention. Right? So it's all been good. And I watched those three cars, and they didn't hurt themselves. They just messed up their cars, right? And so one of my neighbors, about 5 years ago, I told him that, you got to come some big trees right around your house. And he said, yeah, but you should cut them down, really. And so he didn't. And the snow got heavy, way, way up top. And the tree, I'm telling everyone that the whole forests are dying. This big tree was right there, and it just from the ground level, it didn't break off at the top. From the ground level, it just, and its circumference, its width of the tree was probably 40 inches. A big tree, about 150 feet high, and it came down smack, from one corner of the house to the other corner, and as it did, it took another tree so it did an X. It crushed the whole house, from the ridge line through the second floor into the main floor and into the basement, right? And it's on a cliff, so God knows what it did to the concrete foundation. But what's very interesting is 8 hours before this happened, it didn't start snowing yet. It was like, I guess it was Sunday evening, and it really didn't start snowing until Monday here, real hard, and around 10 o'clock, and there were a lot of people there, about 10 people, in that house, and they had a whole bunch of cars, and it started to drizzle, sleet kind of drizzle, and they left, right? And they were supposed to stay there for 3 days, and they left. And 8 hours, those two trees came down. If those people had still been there, they'd been dead. So it's interesting how everything happens for a person. There's no coincidences or any of that, right? So everything that you're seeing out in the world, the wars that are going on, they are all being scripted. You know, the Putin speech in 2006, where he said this, we can't have. You said you weren't going to come one inch near Russia, but he didn't care. He took the money, and he let the oligarchs, frisk and take everything out of Russia, and the people were bought off by chump change of Russia because they were so traumatized by Stalin and the Cold War, then everything collapsing. So There were many times that Putin could have stopped the situation, could have forced, um, and when he went into Crimea, when he went into Georgia, when he went into all those other little places, which they were little teeny towns that had no military, and they stood up to Russia. It was like, hmm. So it's pretty obvious that Russia's military was like, corrupt and defunct. And so after the Minsk agreement, and then it fell through, and then there was a putsch, and then the Nazis came in, and then what's his name? Donald Trump's manager starts with M, Mr. Media, always wears $1,000 suits, right? And he rejiggered the media of Ukraine. I mean, they used to have like two TV stations, and then he brought in their own version of Fox, CNN, MSNBC. I mean, not those things, but entities like that to silo the people into six different racial, not racial, but class structures, right? And that's what the Orange Rebellion came from, right? And then they put in a stand-up comedian, and we put in a game show host as president, right? Ukraine puts in a stand-up comedian as president. We put in, really. And so you have to look over at the script, right? Who put Hamas in there? Assad and the IDF, back in '86, right? It gave them weapons, gave them money, gave them political power to run the place. And, then they had a few intifadas, and they kind of, put fence around the whole place, and basically made it one big prison, right? And wouldn't let, they just let enough in to keep everyone, somewhat, you know. World War III, here we are. James Phillips, just coming in where you are right now. John was talking about you coming out, staying with him. No, I'm never staying with John. Freud said, when you do the same thing over and over again, um, you know, and you expect a different outcome, that's a sure sign of insanity. So, no, I did not stay with John because I had to. I stayed with John because John needed me. He needed me emotionally. He needed me I used to get paid big money to intercede into people's negotiations with their lives and their families and their corporate structure. And basically, that's what I did with John. I didn't stay there because I had to. And John threw me out 32 times in over 2 years. And after the first three times, and each time he threw me out, it was like, right in the middle of a big snowstorm, right in the middle of when we had like, a Nordic bomb, cold air. And he would get out like at 10 at night. It's like 32 times. And each time I did, God helped me into a place where I helped lots of people. I took over a church and, started a thing called the No Fear Cafe. We got a daycare center, a medical center, a job training center, taught ballet. We had theater, we had music Fridays and Saturdays, no budget, no nothing. We had Action Tuesdays, people wanted to organize or give a speech or get a lecturer in, no cost. I'd make a big pot of soup. And I got these two Jamaican grandmas to start to cook. All they wanted to do was cook, and they wanted to open a restaurant. And they had no money. They had no, to get permits and, no. But at church, we could do it in the church basement. I had a great, gigantic kitchen, walk-in refrigerator, fryer-later, big, 9-burner Garland stove, a hood, you name it. And these ladies started kicking out great food because it was a church, nonprofit. We didn't charge anything, but people could donate. So once we got it going, after the first 3, 4 days, we were making $1,000 a day. Right? And I told the ladies, I said, listen, ladies, this is really successful, but don't count on this place. Don't count on these people. Don't count on this church. You know, because the board is all white and there was only 12 of them, and that's all that was left in the church. It was big. All I had a church of a great history, and they got this guy who's really a flim flam man, and he got me to be the action coordinator, and so I'm going to spin this place up, right? And I was living in the section of Roanoke where the prostitutes and the bisexuals and the LGBT people on the edge, not the rich, prostitutes, not the rich LGBT folk, not the rich transgendered folk, no, but the people on the down low, right by the railroad, right? And I lived in the attic of one of these SROs, and I met this girl came in when we had Action Tuesday, and she said she was a cancer researcher, and she explained how cancer worked and how she devised a cure for it. And I understood enough about cancer that she was right on because our bodies are electrochemical devices, and she found that through chemistry you could block through hormones electrically the molecules that would allow your body to you know let cancer in, and she could block it. And she was at Duke doing this research, right? And she was also at John Hopkins. And I had friends in both those places, and I called them up and I said, "So you know this?" And she, "Oh yeah, yeah, we know that person. It's a guy." I said, "Guy? It's a girl." He goes, "No, well, it's a she, he." And this is like 2016, 17. Right? It's about the third time John threw me out. And so, um, why would I go? And I don't have a car. You know. And John really wanted to help me out. He could put something in PayPal. His parents give him 20 grand a month, easy. Right? How did he spend 2 months in LA, right? Without a job, staying at a Airbnb in LA. So no, John is gonna have to, you know, he has to basically communicate to me. So when he communicates to you, what he's trying to do is play you. You know, basically get you to watch his channel because maybe he'll show up and tell a story. I don't know why you guys don't come to this channel anyway. And so, James, if you would, um, you know, put everything in capital so I can read your thing. So, James, what do you think of what's going on in um, in the United States with the oil companies? ExxonMobil buying out all the middle, like Pioneer Oil, right? They're spending $20 billion on buying up almost half of all the oil production in the world. They just, yep. And again, come on, James, put it in caps. Just it's not like you're screaming at me, so I can read it, right? So what's they're not slowing down with burning oil. They're greenwashing everything because the real issue is the burning of fossil fuels is not a good. I mean, the really bad thing of burning coal, oil, natural gas, and creating plastics is the defiling of the shamanic energetics of the planet, right? And our planet, all the plants live on carbon. We're carbon-based entities. So when I was back in the days between 1966 and 1988, I was in Cooper Union in New York City, great college that was architect school. science and engineering and art, right? And what was great about that school, you had to study everything. If you were there for art, you studied architecture and engineering, right? There for engineering, you studied architecture and art. Because they said, they said the most important thing about Cooper Union was its community, and the community made the school. And it was great. And I went, and I was in the first class of this new department that they put together called. There's all this art on the wall. Halls that have no windows. Really very sophisticated on the walls. So they had their own neon light bulb. Right? They found this thing called the Egyptian battery. Right? So I was very privy between 66 and 88 to many, many different groups, very like the Thule Society, the ISIS Foundation, um, the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technology, which I started and was backed by John Hopkins and a few other folk, because we were studying, we were also part of a thing called the U.S. Psychotronic Society, which Preston Nichols, Al Bielek, Duncan, that whole crowd of the Montauk Project. And I was the guy who found the Montauk Project. I mean, when I was working on stopping the Shoreham power plant, I was a strategist, right? The other people were like doing whatever they were doing, but I was a strategist. I said, we need to do this, this, and this. And there was the Grandma's Council, so we need a Grandma's Council, a council of authority. And you old ladies have been fighting Wilco for the last 15 years, and they were going to build 20 reactors here on Long Island Sound, and you guys kept them down to one. Right? So let's see. Sounds like a monopoly. Let's be 12 a.m. where you are. Yep, that's what. Well, 12, almost 12:30. Where are you, James? What neck of the woods are you in? Anyway, so when I was, I kind of, I went to Hofstra University. Then I went to, well, first I went to Cooper Union, then Hofstra, and then the art school at Lincoln Center. It'll come back to me. Then it's very world famous theater, art, music, Juilliard. And by that time, I was Lester Polikoff's best boy, and Lester was one of the biggest Broadway scenic lighting designers. Right, he worked for Joe Malzino, who invented modern scenic lighting. He invented the Fresnel, the Lico, the Scoop, you name it. And so, Lester was Malzino's best boy. I was Lester's best boy. And the best boy in theater, what he does, he works with the director, the art director, the set designers, all the technical people, right? And in theater, one of the most important things is the lighting. It's the magical spark. And that's what Joe Malzino called it, the magical spark. And so I was doing all that up. I graduated high school, went to school in Massachusetts on the border in New Hampshire, and we looked right out at the presidentials and the snow. We used to get so much snow, we would take the trays from the dining room and go up to the third floor and slide off the roof, whee, into the snow, and then down the hill. It was quite fun. and that was a lot of snow. Right? So I graduated in '68. I went up to college. I went to Hofstra, first at Cooper. I was there when I was 16, while I was still in high school during the summers. And so I would come back, you know, when I was in there. So when I graduated, I got into Hofstra, but I still went to, alternative technology department at Cooper because I had buddies there. And they had great shops. We could make anything. And I was making Tesla coils and discharge tubes. And, we were working on a car. This is in 1969, a car that would use induction, meaning you would put a copper plate in the road and put asphalt on top of it, put current in it, and be an induction coil that was, right? And you're no batteries in your electric car. You just drove on the road, and the car would go forever as long as it had that. And all you'd have to do every time you'd pave the road. And so we worked it all out. We also invented a much better turbine than those big, tall, gigantic towers. We looked what the Dutch did, when the Dutch had sails and right windmills. Well, they had these other ones that was so much better because they were like a barrel that were about 12 foot high and all around the barrel that had these vanes. Right? And the torque of the wind at ground level is more than the air pressure up there, where you have the big tall pinwheel. Yeah, it's very fast up there, and the pressure against the blade is quite high. But the barrel one has more torque, and also you don't have to have all kinds of gears. Where you have the pinwheel going around here, and then you have to have a shaft, and then a thing, and a thing, and a thing, and a thing. No, this was straight. You could put it straight into a generator. You could straight into anything you wanted to do, right? And Cooper owned all of 10th Street, and we put these little barrels because these were old, brownstone buildings built at the end of the 19th century, and they all had I forgot what you call architecturally those little things in front of the window, but they were like 2 feet. And we put these barrels all along there, and when 10th Street was like a wind tunnel. And we were making enough electricity to run 100 buildings, right? And so that was 66 to 69. And I left Hofstra, and that's when I went to Juilliard. And I had what was her name? She was my theater. She just kept putting me into really good things. What was her name? Marion Tulin. She was on the board of Juilliard, and she introduced me to Lester, and we became, I became his best boy. And so by the time I got to be 18, 19, I did more things than most people did in their whole freaking life. Right? I had all these good friends, all these people with great connections. I could leave New York and come back and pick up right where I left off. Right? So I kept doing that. And the Vietnam War was going on like crazy. It was just building up, building up, building up. And I decided that I did not want to go to war, and I didn't want to stay in school. I had enough of school. And because I've been, in graduate school since I was like in first grade, because I got murdered by a Catholic nun in first grade, and then Cardinal Cushing put me in once I kind of healed up. I really healed up when I was put into, if you go Google the Maryknoll Catholic sect, and they have a sanctuary in Garden City, Long Island. And I spent 2.5 years there because, this ear, I couldn't hear out of this ear, I couldn't see out of this eye. My jaw like this, like this, and I couldn't even talk. And these guys put me back together. They taught me how to speak, how to hear what it. The guy said, "Yeah, you can't hear what most people hear out here, but you hear other stuff. You hear other frequencies, and it is this here is like a Doppler um, radar. I can tell where things are by, I'm like a bat. I'm not sending out signals, but I can hear them in such a way that oh, it's a quarter mile over there or over there, right? Now this year I have to kind of put towards people to, you know, listen to what they're saying. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Okay. Exclude WA. What's Wyoming? Waynesville? What is WA? Is that a country? Lakewood? Wow. Anyway, what do you do, James? What do you like to do? What excites you? I read the Bible a lot, but I don't read it like most people. Most people read it like it's litigation, right? Liturgic, right? When I was hanging with the Marinols, they showed me that King James was more a time machine. It really is. You read the Old Testament, talks about the Messiah and what the Messiah is going to do, when he's going to do it, and how he's going to do it. And he basically states what Jesus is going to do about 1100 years before he shows up. Right? And if you read it in Greek, and if that's the best one because that's the oldest one, and the Greek Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox kind of, and the real interesting one that was right between them was Bohemia, right? And that's where Mary and Joseph and Jesus, once baby Jesus was born in Bethlehem, they had to get out of town because the king wanted to kill him. And the king, whatever his name was, I think Nebuchadnezzar, whatever, he kept killing little boys between birth and 2 years old for a good 10 years. So the guy went from Bethlehem to Egypt until he got to be about 10, 13, close to 13. And that whole time he was in mystery schools in Egypt, right? Babylonian and Mesopotamian and Sumerian mystery schools, Egyptian ones too. And those are all things that the Marinols taught me, exposed me to those mystery schools. And so by the time I hit third grade, I had some skill sets under my belt, and I could, so I couldn't hear too well and I couldn't see too well. So I didn't do sports, but I read a lot, right? I always had a book in my hand. And whenever someone asked me a question, I would think about it because I had to think of the response and put it into the part of my brain over here and get it prepared and then basically spool out the tape. And I'd be very specific, very educated, very mature. So it's intimidating. A lot of people, you're so intimidating. Me intimidating? Come on, I'm just a, what is it? Oh, gnome. That's what I am. I'm in the gnome union. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Here we are, almost 40 minutes into the show, and there's two people watching, and there's no thumbs up. Come on, let's have some thumbs up. Let's have some subscribers. Let's have some notification. How about some? James doing he's carrying the whole ball of comments, right? So we're it's not we're on the edge of World War III. We're in the middle of World War III. If you go see all of the wars in World War, the Spanish American, let's go Boer War, right? Um, Crimean War, Spanish American War. Let's say no, Boer War, Crimean War, Civil War, Spanish American War, World War One. If we look at all of those, not just those, you can see it's like when someone dies. I don't know how many of you guys there have experienced someone dying, someone close to you dying. Now, someone has a heart attack, keels over, they can die like that. But even that takes a bit of a time. When my true love died in my arms, of a heart attack at you know 35. Um, they sparked her back, and then she died, and they sparked her back, and then she died, and then she died, and then she died. And each time I was right there with her. I mean, right there. And that was, we were in ICU. They had all tubes in her and wires all over, and I'm like, come on, baby, come on, you can. And she came back every time because I was like, I love you, baby. You can't just leave me. And then, she died. And all the buzzers went off, and they tried to resuscitate her and spark her back and all of that, and none of it worked. And so they unplugged her, pulled all the tubes out, and I was unconsolable. I was weeping. Like, I wept so much that my whole shirt was sopping wet. And I got in the ICU bed with her and was wailing, holding her, come back, come back. And so everyone just left me there and pulled the screen around, and I was wailing and wailing and wailing. And if you want to know the rest of that story, you're going to have to get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, Dude Awake 42 Gmail, and I will send you that story. And don't believe a word I say. So these things that occur, especially in historical senses, they're all scripted. You know, nothing happens by chance. Nothing, 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 nothing. Period. Right? And the first script writer is God. God, before and in the beginning, before God, He knew the whole script. He wrote the whole script. You know, I'm not a big fan to anthropomorphize the great maker, and I've lived with so many different, uh, you know, indigenous people. I live with three different tribal people in Brazil, in Africa, and in South America. Well, Brazil. Um, that these people, I was the first white guy they ever saw. Right? That's a real indigenous person. Then I live with a ton of other. I live with a bunch of Aboriginal folk in Brazil and the Amazon, where they were wearing "I Love New York" T-shirts and mirrored sunglasses, and they look like me. We got along great, and a lot of Aboriginal people up in West Virginia, up in the mountains with the Okies, up here in Appalachia. Where I'm, kind of on the edge of here. I'm on the edge of. I'm in this really squirrely neck of the woods. The deep green is between North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and Kentucky, right? And Ohio over there. And I'm in the accordion between the Appalachian Mountains and the Blue Ridge. And it's one of the most paranormal places. And this is why I picked it here. And this is why I'm about 200 miles east um, from Oak Ridge. And this whole real, and why do they put Oak Ridge there? Right? Because it has, see, you have to understand that nuclear weapons are, there's a big industrial part of it, but there is also an alchemical part and a shamanic part. And those guys in Los Alamos used to huff plutonium gases. You think you get high on airplane glue. And so around 1969, I knew I wasn't going back to college. Sent my third semester, and yeah, Johnson City is about, I don't know, 15 miles from where I am at, give or take. I'm kind of right between Johnson City's up here, um, you know, Kingsport's over here, and that's a really squirrely kind of place, and Asheville and Boone's over here. So I'm like within 50 miles, 50 to 70 miles of those. I'm like 80 miles to 90 miles to Asheville, 60 miles to you know Johnson City, uh, maybe 50 miles to Kingsport, no more than that, and Boone's maybe 50 miles. So, but I'm out in the middle of nowhere. But in the last since the COVID, um, you know, and I thought the rich people would never come here because of I described the weather that we have here, and we only have one county road, and they're never going to put in highway here. I'm 50 miles to the closest Walmart's, right? And the rich people can't stand that, and because of Sawtooth Mountains, they can't get their satellite dish stuck on anything, and they've tried to put the spider web of the internet through here just for the rich people, even though they used a grant from the federal government that was part of this grant to bring broadband out to poor people. The rich people get it in their house for free. I mean, they have to pay for it once it gets installed. But for me to get it brought to where I'm at will cost $600. And that's God telling me, no, Al, you don't need that. You can go to somebody like right now, my friends who has Wi-Fi, and I go to restaurants, and you know, that's how I do it, right? And I'm here to serve God. Now I've been serving God my whole life. That's what my life's about. And and God has brought me into the most amazing places, right? And staying with John, so John bought the school from me 2015, maybe 2016, maybe 16. Before, um, yes, it was probably 2016, before Carrot Head was elected. And I mean, that was scripted. The only person that Carrot Head worked for General Electric, NBC. And the only time he really made some serious money was when he was a guest, a host of a TV game show, right? The Apprentice, suitably named because those 10 years that we did that TV show, he basically was being the apprentice for being the president. You're fired. You're fired. Because that's all he did. He fired everybody. He fired more people in office than, he was put there to cause tremendous chaos. And he's going to be put there again to have tremendous chaos. And it doesn't matter what JoJo, the used car salesman, or Carrot Head, gets, elected president because they're both going to we don't have a democracy. We, have an oligarchy. And we are transitioning into we're in a, what do you call it? Plutocratic, um, old boy. Um, we don't have capitalism, so we have criminal capitalism. And so you want to know what the world is going to be like? Go watch the first Blade Runner, right? And they have many great scenes of the city, and it's always raining, and there, you look over into the west, and it's always like the sky is like burning, right? And when they go visit the guy who invented the humanoid android clones with the big glasses, he's just surrounded by the corporate chemical catastrophe, and that's World War III. But to make it better, so we have what's going on in Pike's back before World War I. The English and the French basically said, well, there's going to be all this oil under all this area, so we need to, they just took a napkin, drew lines, and made artificial, um, countries, Iraq, which used to be Babylon, Egypt was Egypt, Syria, Yemen, all those kind of places, and then the AE, and Saudi Arabia. And there is no authenticity or authority for any of that, right? It's just rich oil companies saying, okay, we're going to put a line here, and we're going to dig here, we're going to own that, we're going to own this. And so Israel was put there because they needed a foil. And the Jewish folk were people who were always being picked on. And then after the Holocaust, it was real easy to slide them in there. But that wasn't, the best place to have put, um, you know, Israel would have been somewhere like in Brazil, where nobody really was except the indigenous folk, and those people know how to get out of the way. And Israel would turn it into a nice place rather than the criminals who were just destroying the place. But over the last 70 years, well, last 125 years, um, what has occurred was the Jewish people aren't in charge of Israel. You know, the Zionists are, and the Zionists are the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki are they say the folks who the Germans were looking the Aryans, right? And the Aryans basically came from the Khazarian mob. I don't believe any of this. This is just a cartoon sketch, right? But go check it out. It's pretty much if you go Google any of that, you know, you would find that out. And and I got a whole bunch of stuff on my other device that I could play for you, just like I did that guy going on about that World War III has already started, right? So what's going to I'll give you a nice little thumbnail of what's going to happen in the next 6 months. Right here it is, January. So before Valentine's Day, um, what you think it's bad in the strip right now? No, it's going to get worse. So in less than 3 months, 25,000 innocent folks have died, women and children. They didn't have collection clubs in their hands. They weren't shooting RPGs, and the whole thing that happened in October. Now they had this big fence, right, with all these sensors and TV cameras, concrete walls, and you know, you know, lasers, and you name it, right? And all along where um, Hamas got in, basically the southern part of Israel is a military base. All those little kibbutzes really are military sites. Everyone, all those houses were built to be little bunkers, right? So the basic, you know, military plan of Hamas was they realized that basically Israel was buying off all of those corrupt guys like AE and all those oil states that really didn't have they didn't have any authority, they didn't have any history, they didn't have any reality to them. They were just there to make money, and they didn't care who they kill their own people. I mean, you look at Saudi Arabia, look at all the cities, and they don't educate them to do anything, and so the average Saudi citizen, which is a third of the population, the other two-thirds are slaves, from the Philippines and other countries, that work there as slaves basically. And don't believe a word I say. This is just a cartoon. This is spoken just as entertainment. It has no reality to it, right? So it's as John Birmingham's little passion place that he keeps doing. He does the same thing. Lifts. Does more push-ups. And puts lipstick on and dyes his hair. And I think that is some of the greatest, interesting, almost avant-garde art. You know, and if you just put a little more creativity to it. And so when John and I did shows together, and we would have a viewership of 70 to 100,000 a show, was because I kind of directed, produced. It was on his channel because I didn't have a channel at that time. And he was, John is really smart. He is really talented. I mean, he's a great musician. He's a great actor. He's a pretty good writer. If he didn't, he has, John, I keep calling him the canary in the social coal mine. And so John, basically, to me, I keep saying this, that I don't give up on friends, but I don't enable them either, right? So I'm not going to go back to him and let him do the same thing over and over. I'll let him stay up there and do it himself. Maybe he'll have a breakthrough, or break out, or break up, or but at some point he's going to have to learn that his life is not about him. I mean, he has two boys that he has not been a father for. Right? And now he's got this big school. He could have them come there and they could be with him and they could have a great time. And the way America is right now, any parent can homeschool their child without any kind. The kid just doesn't show up at school. It's fine, right? He doesn't even have to take a test. He doesn't have to go in front of shrinks. He doesn't have to be picked on. He doesn't. And John's kids, they have been homeschooled by their mother, and now they should be homeschooled by their dad, right? Now, if John brought them there, I'd be happy to show up and be, um, you know, the bard, the griot, to help them get along, have insights. But see, John, every time you bring John up to the edge of having an insight, his little devil, in the cartoons, you got the devil on this shoulder and the angel on that side. He's always going, praise Jesus, praise God, praise Jesus, praise God. Well, that's all he can do with that, right? He can't use the little angel to be a motif to have a life. I mean, that's what I've done my whole life. Right now, I have the little devil. When I was being brought up by my grandma, she used to call me Uziel in her dialect, her Gaelic dialect of the islands off of the boot of Italy. Meant Uziel meant little devil, right? Because I was always getting into things, doing stuff that people go, "What did he? What? Ooh, I mean, before I became before I was 6 months old, I electrocuted my mother. You know, so don't believe a word I say. This is all for your entertainment's sake. So no, I'm not going back to John's. Right? Hey, I don't have a car. I can't get there. Right? And if John has a lot of money, he could stick something in my PayPal. He's never done it. A lot of you guys have, and I've got it to work again. Anybody wants to, put something in there. I live on $400 a month. That's all I live on. I did that for a reason. I mean, between 88 and no, 98, from 98 till um, 2014, I was making, I worked for guys who had seven-figure salaries, and they were so desperate, so overstretched that they had seven-figure salaries and they lived from paycheck to paycheck. So I only worked 11 weeks of the year and made more money than your average worker makes um, for a whole year, right? For 11 weeks. And people go, well, you should work all year. You'd make millions every year. And I said, I don't need millions, 11 weeks is all I need, right? So I've had money. I've grown up around people who had more money than God, you know. I went to a number of prep schools that, like Long Lake Lodge in Maine. And I went to school with Rockefellers, and the Shah of Iran's son was my roommate. I mean, these are, up there kind of folk, right? And I mean, those people have more power, more money than morons like, Little Penis Microsoft and, Faceless Boy and what's his name? Jeffy, the Jeffies. I have this theory about the first, like any boy, any male that has, and I'm sorry if I upset anyone out there, but anybody who has a Y at the end of their name, like look at in South Park, Timmy, right? He always died in every episode, you know? When I was a little kid, there was this family called the Smiths in our neighborhood. They had Bobby, Larry, Kenny, Allie, Billy, and four of them died before I moved out of the neighborhood. One kid, and they're all jerks, right? One fell out of our fort onto a picket fence. He had three pickets across the heart. Another one, he had just got a new bicycle and he was like zipping it around, and they were paving the streets in our neighborhood. And first they kind of tore it up, and then they put down oil, and then they put this kind of gravelly stuff over, and then put oil on it on top of it, and then they were putting asphalt on top of that. And as they were rolling all of those things down, this guy, we were riding our bikes around and we were fooling around, and this big, gigantic steamroller comes out. It was like, 2 stories high, gigantic, weighed 8 zillion tons. And the diesel motor made more noise and you couldn't hear anything, right? And so we were smart. We got onto Mr. Jagger's front lawn while they went by, but not Allie. Huh, yeah. He was zipping around and doing wheelies and that. And as the big machine was heading towards us, and this guy's way up there, he can't see in front of the big roller. Allie slides on the oil, and the bike's on his legs, so he can't get up, and it's oil, and he slips, and that steamroller goes right over him. So one dies on a picket fence, one dies under a steamroller, another one dies he walks into, when we would walk to school, the utility company, most of the power lines were underground, but they would have these transformer stations, right? And they weren't like big things, but they were like a little building and had a door, right? And usually had a big lock on it. And we were walking to school, and I think it was Bobby, or Kenny, but we're walking by, and the door is open, and there's a big sign on it that says, "Do not enter. High voltage electricity." I know what that is. And I said, "Oh, we shouldn't go in there." He goes, "I'm going to go in there. You can't tell me what to do." He goes, he was turned into a grease spot. So that family, like before I left, before the nun murdered me in first grade, three of those boys were gone. And I swore that was because they had a Y on the end of their first name. So anyone out there who has that, I'm sorry if I upset you, but that's it. So all of this is scripted, guys. Let's see. I'm glad I stopped people from calling me Jimmy. Yep. Yes, James. See? Very good, James. Yep. So see, now James is a perfect example. Here's a guy that he was lined up to be Jimmy, but he knew he wasn't a Jimmy. He was a James. And so anybody who has, that has a Y, I never call them by the Y, I never call them Stevie or Stephen, right? James, Robert. Don't even call people Bob. Because Bob is for me. I'm Al Bob. And Bob is like, if you go back into Sumerian, it was a demigod called Baal. And when they put it into Egyptian, it came out to something, if you read it phonetically, it sounded like Bob. So, Al Bob. It's not bad being a demigod, It's like you work for God, it's like, your middle management, right? So, right. So James, what is WA? What's Lakewood, WA? And what's Lakewood like? Since we got all the time in the evening, how much time do I have left in my battery? In about 20 minutes. So come on, guys. You want to get a hold of me? It's the dudeawake42 at Gmail. if you want to put something in my PayPal, I want to ask who it is, do to wake42 at Gmail. I could really use it. It'd really be nice. But it's very interesting to live. Can any of you out there live on $400 a month? Right? I don't have a credit card. I have none of the above. Right? I don't own anything. I don't even have a car anymore. Right? So that is the storyline. Eh, I have no way to get to John's, right? So and basically every time I go to John's, what happens is I go there, and within an hour, I'll drive all 200 miles from the deep green to the school. I'll get there. Now I have other things to do, And back in the day, before I really got myself into this, I died in 2014. Lakewood, Washington. Oh, you're way over on the West Coast. So you're getting a lot of snow right now. You're getting a lot of winter weather. You're getting a lot of. Are you on the coast, or are you up in the hills? How close are you to Seattle? Boeing. I used to hang in Seattle. I'm a big airplane fanatic. My dad was in the Air Force, and so when he was a bird colonel, and he ran special projects. So when I was a real little kid, I got to see an above ground nuclear test in the 50s. I was about 6. Right. So, with my dad, I would, and so he would have these big fancy, and so he'd stick me with some sergeant or some lieutenant, and they would, babysit me, and I was like real interested, 20 miles from Seattle. And so we went to Seattle a couple of times and looked at projects. And back in the 60s, they're all like gaga right now about hypersonic missiles. Well, they freaking had hypersonic missiles in the 50s. Right? That's something that goes faster than Mach 4, basically. Above Mach 3 to 6 and above. Right? Now, the X-15 went Mach 15 in like 1954 to 1964. And that sucker, you know, and what's his name? The guy who went to the moon, Neil Young, Neil whatever his name, Armstrong. He took that sucker into space. They had little jets to get him, to go up. He went past the atmosphere, and he was like at Mach 15. So, oh, our hypersonic missile goes, you know, 6 times the speed of sound. No, please, and all of the stuff that we see is like caveman technology. A good example of the technology that the hidden hand has, and that's the guys who write the script, the guys behind the poster boys. It's a hidden, and that's my name for the hidden hand. I mean, the Illuminati. That doesn't. I mean, all the names that are in the public domain are just, what do they call it? Gaslighting or cutouts. I just call it the poster, behind the poster boys. Just like, the guy who wrote The Wizard of Oz was an economist, and he was going on and on about the, um, what the central bank was doing. You know, you know, good old Dorothy lands on the Wicked Witch of the whatever, and right where the path to Oz goes, and Oz is emerald green, like greenbacks. And the path you take is follow the yellow brick road. What are those yellow bricks? But gold bullion. And you can see many, many metaphors, like when, you know, Dorothy and the Toto and the lion fell asleep in the poppy fields, it goes on and on and on. And the corn, I mean, there's so many metaphors about the industrial um, oligarchy of the world, and that is all being turned into a singular oligarchy, right? A unipolar world. I mean, we've been in a unipolar world, you know, since way back, Mesopotamia, Babylon. You know. Read your Old Testament. That's why, the New Testament is just basically all the New Testament is just Paul, and he was a smart guy. He's a Roman. He was a lawyer. And you know who Paul was? Did you guys ever see the TV show 30 Miles from Seattle? Did you ever see the TV show Mad Men? Right? And that was, you know, Paul. Anyway, let's see how much time we got left. We're getting down there. When it hits the red line, I got to go. So it's been an hour and 11 minutes, and there's only one person watching, James. Anyway, so I would hang out with my father at Boeing, and so I saw a lot of crazy stuff. And he would go to Los Alamos, and he would go to the the missile range. I knew, Werner von Braun used to come to our Christmas parties. My dad would have these. My mom was the hostess with the mostess, and my dad was Mister. Everyone liked him, and he was super triple Virgo. Would get the job done like nobody's business. Really well organized. But his whole career, it started in the U.S. Air Force in 1936 or seven, and he was right there in the rebuilding of the Air Force, right? Getting the boat, Boeing B-17 was the first, you know, real modern bomber, but so complicated that it kept crashing. He helped, you know, make all the lists and do everything so it would work, and make it so anybody could work it. Right? He was very good at that. He was very good at finding the best people for the job, and then letting them do it and leaving them kind of alone. And as long as they saluted them and filled them in on what was going on and made them look good, and that was my dad's skill. Right? And I have that same skill. You know. And my mom was like Adolf Hitler and Marilyn Monroe. I mean, gorgeously and that razor blade German mind. But Adolf didn't even have a German mind. He was grabbed during World War One, and they played with his brain, and he was a poster boy because you see him doing the Nuremberg rallies, right? Just like Carrot Head. I mean, he's making whatever he says makes no sense, and it is focused on this emotional dynamic of basically hypnotism. And who in their right mind would say, yes, let's have more? We had 4 years of Carrot Head, and it was terrible, but let's have another. Anyway, I'm about to run out of juice here, so I'm going to leave you guys. James, it was a real pleasure. Come back again. And again, James, you want to talk mano y mano about anything, get a hold of me at the Dudawake42 at Gmail. Dudawake42 at Gmail. And I'll see you guys later.